One of the main reasons why I would probably bunk school is because she'd forget to drop me on the way to work.
Nowadays, what I think is happening, which I started 30 years ago, is go into a group practice, start a partnership. Of course, you share your profits, but you share the stress.
I really don't know what the difference is between freezing eggs and freezing embryos.
If you over exercise, that can also have a detriment because your recovery, your hormonal balances also go for a toss.
It's important to take charge of your own finances. Because if you keep letting your spouse or your husband or somebody else manage it, you're never really going to know what is happening with your hard-earned money.
Exactly.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Happy Hour with FinCocktail. Today we have a fabulous mother-son duo with us. Dr. Nandita Palshetkar with over 30 years of experience in gynecology. She runs one of the topmost IVF clinics in the country and she's an IVF specialist of course. With her, her son Dr. Rohan Palshetkar. He also is a gynecologist and is an IVF specialist too. He consults with a few of the topmost hospitals in Mumbai, including HN Reliance, and he runs his own clinic at Opera House too. So let's welcome them.
Hi Niyati, thank you for having us here at the Happy Hours Cocktail.
I'm so glad you both could make it.
No, I'm really thrilled.
I'm looking forward to a wonderful chat with the two of you all.
Yeah, same here. It's a different topic, something outside our niche as well. So looking forward to the entire thing.
Absolutely. So to start off, I just wanted a little bit of a background on the two of you all. How did you first, how did you end up in this field?
I think it's crazy because there's been no doctors in my family. I was the first one. But I don't know, ever since I was a child, I used to always tell my parents, I want to become a doctor. I want to become a doctor. And obviously, after the 12th, I got admission. I went into medicine. And when we were doing our final year, I loved gynecology. And all my friends, I used to teach them normal labor. So I was the one who was teaching them, and obviously I knew I loved it, and I got into gynecology. Now when I finished gynecology, that was the turning point in my life actually, because family planning was very very on the top at that point. So it was infertility versus family planning,
Mm.
just normal course of things or super specialization into IVF. And in those days, when I mean 30 years ago, uh, surgery was very very important. And on the other side was this new field of technology which had just come in, and it was really fascinating. So I actually took a path which was less trodden, and I went into IVF. Oh, and I loved it. I really loved it.
Yeah.
So I think it was a turning point in my life.
That's amazing. I feel like being able to give that hope and that joy to people who want to be parents, I think that's an amazing feeling altogether. How about you, Rohan? How did you sort of end up because of your mother? Was it a natural sort of
So
course?
this is actually kind of interesting. I didn't want to be a doctor at the start because of my mother. Because I used to see her studying all the time. Obviously, I can't claim to be the first gynecologist or first doctor in my family.
Definitely following in her footsteps
Exactly.
has
So
got to be hard.
imagine a 14 or 15-year-old boy asked to bunk school, go to the hospital to record what's happening in an IVF lab. As she said, technology in 92, and imagine a 15-year-old going to this IVF lab where they're literally showing you things which are happening, like they're mixing sperms, eggs, creating a baby in the lab. And I'm like, with my jaw wide
Wide
open,
Wow.
and I come out, and I had decided I was taking commerce till then. I was pretty sure I wanted to get into the diamond business. I wanted to be a diamond merchant and get into that. I went to that lab. I come out. I'm like, Mom, I'm becoming a doctor. And I was like, how things change. And now when I go to look at it, like almost now 22 years down the line, I'm like, such a great decision that I took back then. And I'm really grateful for mom making me bunk school.
Yeah.
That is the most important part. I think sometimes just mom always says this: things happen for a reason and always a good reason.
Yeah.
So I think as much as we say taboo to bunking school, I think this just turned out to be for a good reason.
Yeah.
I
that's
take the
amazing.
credit. I feel that he followed me. You know?
Yeah.
Well, I
No.
absolutely give her the credit because one of the main reasons why I would probably bunk school is because she'd forget to drop me on the way to work.
You know, I used to drive in those days, and so many times we've just driven past the school,
Yeah.
and he's saying, "Mom,
Wait,
I'm
I
with
need to
you
get
in the
off."
car."
To a point, even if I told her 10 meters before my school would come, she'd still forget it.
Drive past. So tell me a little bit about financial struggles that doctors usually face. And I'm asking this because usually if you're trying to be a doctor, if you're pursuing to be a doctor, you're studying till much later in life as compared to other professions. I remember that I finished studying everything, including like my postgraduate degree and all, by the age of 23. At 23, doctors are still probably like thinking that they have
The
4 or
basic
5 years more of studying to go
We're
MBBS.
just in
minimum.
an internship. We're not even doctors yet.
Exactly. So I'm sure that there are some kind of there's some kind of an impact that it'll have to your career, your finances. Probably going to start earning later in life. What are your sort of struggles over there?
So I'm gonna give you a little bit of perspective of mine before my mother gives hers. When finished my post graduation, this is 10 years down the line of studying. I started off with a salary of 40,000 rupees a month. Now, 40,000 rupees a month, I started off. Obviously, I'm not going to compare about the family, but this is my own income, which I'm talking about.
Right.
And I'm paying 5,000 rupees for my wife to go and study somewhere else where she's working. So now, if I look at it that way, I would really be really miserly with my expenditures.
Yeah.
If I'm going out clubbing or if I'm going out for dinners, I'd make sure I'm not having an extra drink of alcohol
Yeah.
or anything like that to make sure that I'm able to budget myself in.
Sure.
And one thing I believe that I did something smart initially was I started an SIP speaking to my friends who were in the finance department. So I said, listen, I want to invest some money. What do I do? So I started a simple SIP of 20,000 rupees, which was about 50% of my salary back then.
Exactly.
So you have no idea how miserly I used to live back then. So I would just make sure that that 20,000 rupees went on. And this I started almost 10 years ago.
Right.
And it's still going on my
Wow,
SIP.
that's amazing.
And I don't ever want to touch it till my daughter probably requires it.
Right.
So initially, yes, imagine when you compare, say, a BCom student. Yes, they start maybe with an average salary of say 20 to 30,000 per month, but that's just after 3 years of education.
Yeah.
I'm starting with 40,000,
After
10 years of education.
Yeah.
So it does initially play a little bit of a struggling role as you start off, but then eventually you get smarter with your decisions, smarter with your money, and then hopefully not struggling as you did as soon as you get out of your MD.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now I know that both of you have your own clinic set up. And setting up a clinic, in my opinion, is a huge feat. I mean, it's not an easy task by any means. What advice would you give to budding doctors that want to set up their own clinic? Should they do that as a first step, or should they like sort of work on getting experience, getting that skill set, and then jumping into setting up their own practice?
I think times are changing. You know, he talked about 40,000. I used to get 500 rupees. You know, that was the kind of a thing. And my husband is a non medico. You know, I just want to give you a little bit of insight.
Sure.
He was a diamond merchant and he got into the business, family business, at the age of 17. We met each other when we were 18. So we were going around together and all that. And by the time I finished and I was earning 500 rupees, he was doing very well in business. He has set up. So he actually invested in me when I finished to set up a clinic. So you know what? It all depends on what kind of field you're going into. Like IVF needs investment.
Right.
But if you just want to set up a gynecology clinic, a consulting clinic, I think that's great. You
Okay.
can do that. You plan your budgeting, as he said, plan your budgeting. Do not take very heavy loans, because initially it becomes difficult for the to get patients and all. And nowadays what I think is happening, which I started 30 years ago, is go into a group practice, start a partnership,
Okay.
because it always helps that there are two or three people who are working together.
Yeah.
Of course you share your profits, but you share the stress.
Yeah.
See, medicine is not all about finance only.
Yeah.
There's so much stress, there's so much it takes away your time.
Yeah.
So if you're in a group practice and the patients know that you could be handled by any one of this
Yeah.
team, it gives so much better life to the
And
consultant.
confidence
And
to the patients as well, right? Like if
yeah,
you went into labor and your doctor weren't here,
yeah,
you would just go into a panic
yeah,
mode.
in fact, I tell them this is second opinion free of cost.
Yeah.
We discuss, we talk, and I'm so happy that he's with me. That there are a lot of times now, of course, because of the age gap, he goes in the night. He does all the night duties, but it's always very helpful, and we put our resources together.
Sure.
See, a major thing what she talked about was group practice. In fact, I think the current generation, which I would say is mine, is now considering group practice more than anything else. Because forget about the part where there's a second opinion or anything like that. You ever fall in an emergency? See, the field of medicine is not that easy. It's not. It always helps to have a second outlook on things, in the sense if there's a complication,
Right.
if there's anything like that. But coming back to setting up a practice, what my mom said, that she had a husband who was well established in his practice of, he's a diamond merchant. So he invested in her. But now when I look at our generation, we truly believe that we would like to work with someone initially, get that experience of the field. Like, I'm going to give my example. Obviously, it can't really set up as much as she said, but what I'm saying is I worked with her for 2 years before really branching out and then seeing my own patients and this. So I worked under her for 2 years to grab that opportunity of experience. So currently, even what I see is you work under certain doctors and then you set up your own private practice, because one, you get the experience. Two, it's also a little bit of earning working under the doctor,
Sure.
where you are able to build that balance without really having to spend and create your savings to set up your own place.
Right. Right. So moving on to your specialty, which is IVF. It's becoming an increasingly popular sort of approach that people opt for. So give us a ballpark about how expensive this procedure actually is.
Okay. So when we look at the IVF process, it's going to be varying. It depends on case to case. See, there are certain treatments which can start just costing from about 70, 80,000, and sometimes it can go even up to 2.5 lakhs.
Okay.
So the thing is, it all gets individualized case to case. So we get a lot of queries saying that, doc, what's going to be the average cost of an IVF cycle? It gets very difficult for us to actually answer that over the phone, because the call comes saying, what's the cost? The thing is, we need to end up looking at each case individually. It's not that one size fits all. So at any given point, only once we are able to diagnose the patient. See, if it's a younger patient where there's just the male factor that's involved, the IVF is probably going to be of a lesser cost. But if there is both couples which are involved, where there is fertility issues, they've had previous abortions or they've had previous failed IVF cycles, they require a lot more investigations, they require a lot more treatment protocols, and that's where the costs can increase a little bit more. So it all depends on case to case basis, and that's how we're able to actually decide what would be the exact cost for the patient. Again, the dosages of medicine differ from each
Patient to
patient to
patient.
patient. So that also decides the cost of an IVF cycle. So it all depends per patient. But if you want a ballpark figure, anywhere from 80,000 to 2.5 lakhs.
Can I just interrupt here? There are a lot of budget centers which have come in. Okay. And I was one of the first people to introduce a low cost cycle for the needy.
Okay.
Because IVF was always, as you said, perceived as very expensive, and the cost was, creating a life. We are creating a life here. We're not doing any simple things. So everything needs to be perfect, toxicity levels, everything. So looking at all that, it was really difficult. But what we realized is, without compromising on the cost, we put in this budget centers. And today there are a lot of budget centers following our, example. And it has helped. So, cycles are done for 60,000. And our PM Modi ji is made in India, made a lot of difference. Because today we get drugs which are made in India and which are, I think, 10 times cheaper also.
Wow.
So, and effective as well. So I think the cost has really come down now. And of course, but you must remember also, artificial intelligence is a technology, chat GPT, you all are talking about it now. We have been using it in our labs for the past 5 years pre-COVID.
Wow.
We have had artificial intelligence. All these technologies which we include, for the first time in the country, we've introduced it. We've done the embryoscope. We've done so many things. All this needs equipment, needs, I have an incubator in my which is a personalized incubator, which is like, you have time lapse in your phone,
Yes.
right? So the same incubator takes a time lapse pictures of the embryos, and that tells us how good the embryo is. It costs 1.5 to 1.7 crores,
Wow.
one machine. So, it all depends on what is the level of the thing your lab is. Of course, I've grown it over the years.
Right.
I can't just go today and set up a lab. If I'm setting up, if a young guy is setting it up, not possible.
Right.
But all these are technologies. So what I'm dealing with right now at Leelavati is all difficult cases. Those who have failed elsewhere and come and all. And even the centers which we have, I mean, we have 11 centers all over the country. So we do have most of the technology everywhere. And he is one of the lucky younger generation who's got to work with all these high-end technologies. And believe me, we offer these technologies even at our
Budget centers. How do you
Yes.
manage to make it a budget center in that case?
We
It's-
basically work at no cost differences,
Okay.
in the sense that we try and give it to whatever the consumables would be used,
Right.
Yeah.
based
Just
on
cost
those
to
costs.
cost.
Just cost to cost, so that at
And
least
make a little bit for the annual maintenance
Maintenance.
Of course, of
contracts, and
course.
there's so much expenditure.
Correct.
Your staff is there. You
Correct,
need a
absolutely.
good staffing. You need embryologists. So it's a lot of inputs which are required.
Sure.
We are doctors with a passion. Fortunately, I know we don't have any finance background, but touch wood, we managed to float even in COVID.
actually
That's
COVID,
amazing.
for 3 months, there was zero income. And I have a staff which is about 110 people.
Wow.
Obviously, I can't stop paying them, but we were like really getting anxious as the months passed.
Right.
And then fortunately, we were allowed to practice, after 3 months, because I'm sure the world over there was a problem.
Yeah.
So, then we were allowed to practice. And I think COVID was very good for you.
it was.
In what sense?
In the sense that I got a lot of independence early in my career. So, see, mom is on the older side of the spectrum, I would say, and so is her partner. So, during that time, I told both of them, nothing doing. Y'all both are not stepping out of the house. In fact, I started off. I was the first one in the entire unit to begin the IVF process everywhere. So, and I used to actually lie to them that I'm just going for the IVF. I delivered about 60, 70 COVID positive
Wow.
mothers during, and we wouldn't tell them because they'd freak out.
Yeah.
So, when I started, I said, look, I'll head to Leelavati, I'll head to Opera House, I'll head to DY Patil. I'll just take y'all on video consults
Correct.
so that the patients can still see you. You can get the history. You can still give your expertise. We've got our teams in place, which will end up doing the procedures and everything. And y'all just have to come in just for the transfer. And when they used to do the transfer, we used to space out the transfers, create a green corridor for them.
Wow.
Like literally, like she steps out of the car, straight into the lab. She puts the baby in and straight back into the car. So
I
we
mean,
wanted
so
to ensure
protected.
we
Yeah.
wanted to ensure that they are safe. At the same time, they're still able to help out every patient that's coming in.
Absolutely.
So-
That's amazing.
But COVID did some things like for doctors, especially. I think video consults have become a norm.
Yeah.
So it's become good for the patients also. The other day, some patient came from the suburb, and I told them, they met me for the first time. I said, the second call with all the reports, we can actually do a video consult. And they were so happy because they have to drive down, they have to park the car,
Yeah, I mean, and
taken off from work, so it
Coming
works.
to
It's a
this side
win-win
of the city
situation.
from the
Today
suburbs is an
morning,
easily 3
yeah.
hour journey back and forth.
Absolutely. Today morning, I did a video call with the patient in Boston. It was 12:30 in the night for them. Poor guys. But, the world has shrunk because of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So it's amazing.
That's great. That's amazing. So, in today's day and age, a lot of people choose to have babies much later in life. And I know that I'm sure that you get asked this a lot. But as someone who's been through the process of sort of getting pregnant and all of that, and I have a lot of friends that are in this stage where they're on the fence whether to have a child now, later. I really don't know what the difference is between freezing eggs and freezing embryos. Can you tell us? It's a little bit of a technical bit for my podcast, but I want to know.
Okay, first of all, I think the age is very, very important because the quality of your eggs deteriorates with age.
Right.
In fact, there was a study in London which said after the age of 27, the egg quality actually starts dropping. But what we have seen with the numerous research and everything, 35 is a kind of a cutoff which we've given
Okay.
all the girls. But if for any reason, there is a career option, there is education, you've not found your partner yet. That's why girls get married late. And if all those things happen, and sometimes even cancer, cancer affects a lot of girls at a younger age, and then they take treatment and they're fine and they get married and they want to have a child. But cancer therapy can be very toxic to your ovaries. So all these kind of patients are the patients who go for egg freezing,
Okay.
because what they can do is they can get their eggs out of their body, freeze them, keep it in a bank. You can keep them for 5 years, 10 years.
Okay.
Long
What's the
as long as I
max?
maintain the temperature,
Oh,
they are fine.
okay.
So minus 196 degrees centigrade. In fact, my patient who's been very vocal and has been a advocate of egg freezing is Miss Diana Hayden, who was Miss
Oh,
World,
yeah.
and she got 3 babies from her eggs frozen 8 to 10 years ago. So I think it is a technology which empowers girls, which gives them a lot of freedom and also doesn't bog you down.
Hmm.
But of course, my advice to everybody is that if you're in a position where you can go ahead and have a baby, have a baby.
Sure.
But if you can't, due to various problems, you can actually freeze your eggs.
Okay.
That's basically egg freezing. In embryo freezing, what we do is we take the eggs, we take your partner's sperm, we inject them, and we create that embryo, and that can be frozen for as long as
The eggs.
Exactly. So now I'll just give you a simple example that I myself froze our embryos. My wife and I froze our embryos 1 year into our marriage.
Wow.
Of course, on her insistence, because we were sure we didn't want to have a kid so soon because we were still studying.
Right.
We had our careers in place, so we wanted to get settled in before. But just because you've frozen your eggs and frozen your embryos doesn't mean you're going to conceive only through IVF.
Right. You can naturally conceive.
Yeah, my
as
wife
well.
and I conceived naturally, but we always knew that
If it
we
doesn't
required in the future, the embryos and eggs we froze were at a much younger age.
Yeah.
So the quality of the embryos, the quality of the eggs is better, and your success rate of an IVF cycle is much better with younger eggs than what I would have had to do probably 8 years down the line.
Sure.
So what this is more like is like a fertility insurance. Well, talking about finance, the insurance part should make sense, but it just gives you sort of a backup saying that you have better quality eggs, better quality embryos to get a better chance at a pregnancy rather than going for an IVF pregnancy, say at 36, 37.
Sure.
So generally when I meet couples, or rather all of our doctor friends who are there, we always are telling them, look, you're 29, 30, freeze your embryos whether you're thinking of having a kid or not, because now there's also that thought process that we don't want to have a kid at all, which is fair enough, you have the right. But what we tell them is freeze your eggs or freeze your embryos, because if you decide to have a change of mind at 37, 38 that now you want to have a kid, it may be too late to possibly conceive naturally or even through an IVF process.
Sure. Absolutely.
I think 40 should be a kind of a cutoff,
I think 35. I think you're also being a bit too generous.
No. I had a patient who required IVF to have a baby. She had her first baby at 35, 34 or 33, something like that. And she came back to me at 35. The baby was hardly 1 year old. So she said, "Yeah, I want to have a baby later on in life." She was she was a professional, and I want to freeze my embryos. So she froze her embryos, went back to work, did a whatever, came back at the age of 40, had an embryo transfer, and had the second baby.
Wow.
So, I mean, that also is something of an option. You won't believe it. I had a patient yesterday, Rohan, 1.5 months of marriage, 1.5 months of marriage. And she was like, my mother had early menopause.
Hmm.
And I definitely don't want to have a child so soon, but I'm aware of the fact that my mother, it could be genetic, and I want to freeze my
That's great.
babies. It's amazing. I said, I was really amazed. I said, "You are a working girl." I mean, how was she aware? I think this,
That kind of
your
awareness. Yeah.
podcast, actually, this chat will actually go out to a lot of people, and they will become aware of this situation. Because, a lot of people come to me at 40 plus, as he said, you shouldn't wait till that long. And then there is no way. Another patient I consulted, older and very, very low eggs. I mean, sometimes they have to go for egg donation.
Hmm.
So it's really, I think, prudent to be aware of this
Hmm.
and to take care of your fertility.
Right. And how hard is this process on your body as a woman? I'm asking, is it hard to go through the process of egg freezing?
It's become a very patient friendly process.
Okay.
It's become very, very patient friendly. The injections, which are the most painful part, according to everybody.
Okay.
But those also today, now you have to take injections for 10 days, and they are like as thin as your hair, the
Hmm.
needles.
Hmm.
So they're self injections, that
Oh,
kind of a
so
thing.
I can do it on my own.
Yeah.
Absolutely, at home, and just do 3 or 4 sonographies, and then you get admitted, and you are given anesthesia, and it's a needle. You know how you collect blood?
Correct.
That way we collect the eggs
Okay.
with a needle and suction,
Okay.
looking at the ultrasound machine.
Don't worry, that part we do. We don't
No,
expect
no,
the
of
patient
course.
to do it ourselves.
Thank you. I know.
So, as someone who's been through the process of, delivering a baby and sort of going through that initial 3-4 months of a lot of changes, I know about postpartum depression. Fortunately, I didn't go through it, but it's something that is common. It is something that is not addressed, and for some reason, I feel like it's something that people, um, brush aside, saying that हाँ होता है, ये तो होता ही है. Like, I know a lot of people who I met after I delivered, and if they're asking you how you're really feeling, and you tell them how you really are feeling, everyone says, "Huh, but this to happens," and you feel in your mind that you don't want to be you don't want your problem to be
Just
brushed
pushed aside,
aside
yeah.
or be like, "हाँ, ये तो सबको ही होता है." It is a problem. I'm facing it, and I'm feeling the wrath of it. At least acknowledge it, because you've asked me, I'm telling you.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you what, about 20 to 35% of patients do end up going through the postpartum blues. Like, I think postpartum depression, the minute you add that word depression, it becomes a taboo for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So these postpartum blues, when we are talking about, is occurring. In fact, I've had quite a few patients, after I deliver them, they come to me and they're telling me that, "Doc, I'm feeling so overwhelmed." The point is, I tell them, and I truly believe that this is there, I just tell them that, okay, speak out.
Hmm.
Let's hear you out. I tell them that, look, I'm going to hear out what everything. If it's something that's going to be manageable by me, I will help you manage it. If it's not, I always ask them to meet a counselor. We're not talking about a psychiatrist or anything, but just a basic counselor who she can go and just speak out her mind to. Because as you said, when you speak to someone in the family, they're like, "Arey hota hai, koi problem nahi, this phase shall pass."
Yeah.
But that's
But
not
you're
what
in it, you're feeling it.
exactly. In fact, I'll give you an example of a couple of doctor friends of mine who gave me a call saying that, look, and I'll tell you, they were gynecologists. So it's not like they were outside our field
The
of
field.
expertise. They just called me up and they're like, "Rohan, I know you've treated a couple of patients like this before. I said, look, it's not like I've treated them, but just speak to me. I'll help you out. Sometimes you just want a ear. They don't want
Yeah.
advice. They just want to be able to vent or just talk
To
about
be
it.
heard.
Yeah.
So they want to be heard, as mom's saying. So I always tell them that, look, if I'm not able to hear you out, or you need more time, or you need a more expert, because sometimes we may not be able to diagnose when those blues are turning into depression,
Correct.
because it's not my field of expertise. But catching it early, going to a counselor, they may be able to understand that, look, the lady is going through a phase which is possible that they're passing through, or is it getting into something more serious? Because at no point do we want any self-harm to the mothers or any harm to the child either.
Absolutely, absolutely. But sometimes people who are going through it may not even know that they're going through it. So what are the classic signs to look out for?
So some of the classic signs you would see is that a little bit of neglect towards the child.
Right.
it it's not something that's deliberate. It's just that it just happens that when the baby's crying, you sometimes just like let the baby cry or things like that. I'm not talking about ferberization. That's a different
That's
way
no,
of
yeah.
bringing up a child.
I know that.
Yeah. Then inability to breastfeed. Sometimes even the breast milk doesn't end up coming because of the change in the
And the stress and
levels and the serotonin levels. Now, crying randomly, that's another thing which you just say, you pass it off like, oh, it's a part of the hormones. It's not. It could be signs of postpartum blues. They may not be going into depression. It might just be that slight period of change. But these are some common signs which will tell you that, look, and sleep disturbances. That's one of the most common causes of postpartum blues. Because see, you're waking up every 2-3 hours to feed the baby. Then forget about the feeding part. The feeding part may be the easy part where you end up feeding it. But then after that, you're burping the child.
trying to
You wanna
put him
ensure
back to sleep, him or
putting the
her
child
back to sleep.
sleep. So it does play a role in this, because you think that you breastfed only for 30 minutes and then you're sleeping again, so it's fine. That's what at least the world thinks. You don't understand that it takes another 30 to 45 minutes to pack that,
Yeah.
burp that child and put that child back to bed. So you're losing that 1 hour of sleep for you.
I know. But there is good news now. There is a new drug, the depression part. It used to be like a 4 to 6 weeks treatment, but there's a new drug which has just been launched by the US FDA. It's not available in India yet, but within 3 days you are fine, and you don't
Really?
need to take long-term therapy.
I think there'll probably be a lot more research on it to understand how it works.
Sure.
But remember one thing, this is only because we're on the podcast, that drugs would be a later part of your treatment.
Right. If you've been diagnosed correctly
Correct.
with
The psychiatrist will probably
Yeah.
treat you.
absolutely.
You have to refer
Don't
to a
take it over the
psychiatrist.
counter. It's not
Absolutely.
your
No, these
Crocin and
drugs,
Combi Flask.
these
Yeah.
drugs are not available over the counter.
Yeah.
They will not be given to you without a prescription.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So, Dr. Nandita, tell us 3 ways that men can improve their fertility.
Oh, wow. My favorite subject. Stop smoking, guys. Women and men. I think it's very important, your lifestyle modifications.
Okay.
Smoking, alcohol, and recreational drugs.
Hmm.
I see a lot of young couples on, smoking
Sure.
and other things. So I think that is one way to take care. Second is, I don't know whether you girls will agree, but have a child early, or then at least freeze your fertility.
Okay.
That is what you can do. Prevent unnecessary pregnancies, because a lot of kids, it's get pregnant and want to go in for abortion. And also, weight.
Okay.
Weight is also very important. You need to be normal. You can't be too thin. Size 0 is not good for fertility, and neither is,
A plus size.
plus size.
Absolutely.
So I think all these factors, nutrition, anything else that I've missed out?
Vaping.
Vaping, yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
new
I thought
trend.
smoking was
Well,
smoking included vaping. No,
I mean,
it's supposed
technically
to be
it's
the
all nicotine, but
yeah, but it's supposed to be the alternative.
yeah.
which
no
people think.
tobacco in any form. Let me put it that way.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of women from the different societies, they chew tobacco.
Hmm.
So They have it in all these
Also,
pan
adding
parags
Gutka
and
and all
all
that,
gutka, yeah.
also now I'm going to give you another side of this, which I'm going to talk about, is over exercising.
Okay.
Like, in the sense, you may not be a size 0, you may be a size 4 or size 6, but if you over exercise, that can also have a detriment, because your recovery, your hormonal balances also go for a toss.
Oh.
It's not just about being at the right weight. Say you're a size 4 or a size 6, so let's put it in BMI. You're in the BMI of 18 to 23, which is normal for the Indian population. But you can't be working out 6 hours in a day,
Yeah.
or doing cardio 4 hours in a day. Overdoing it also has a detrimental effect on your
Talk
fertility.
about the steroids.
Steroid usage. A lot of men and women are using steroids to, like, now you'll see these teenagers who are trying to build muscles, their
Get
six-pack abs,
bulky
get
and
ripped. Well, over usage of those steroids can affect your sperms, because you'll have a low count, you'll have low motility. The shape of it, though, will go for a toss. Even when you're looking at steroids giving to women, see, two common steroids used in bodybuilding are testosterone and growth hormone.
okay.
Testosterone is a male
Hormone.
hormone primarily. So when you're giving it to women, it does mess around with your reproductive system.
Right.
And growth hormone, we also use it during our IVF, but in certain dosages which are much lower than what they use in bodybuilding.
Right.
That too can affect your fertility in the long run. So when you do end up using these drugs, you need to consult your doctor
Yeah.
before doing them,
Yeah.
or as mom said, freeze your fertility and then go in for these things.
Absolutely.
Ideally, don't use them if you're not going
her
in
face
for
says,
it.
don't go in for these things at all.
No. I mean, I think you should have a reality check. At what cost are you doing everything?
Right.
So,
I'm just going to add on to what you're saying, is that now if you look at all the US bodybuilders and everything, they have a team of doctors before they start taking these injections. They're actually being checked at every given point to see, okay, your liver's not damaged, your kidney's not damaged,
and your sperm frozen.
and your
Correct.
and your fertility is not affected. And then they go in for these on and off periods, as they call it.
Right.
So it's not that you be on these injections continuously, which is a massive misconception in India that we have.
Sure. So, what according to you, I mean, there's no particular age, but what is the best period to get pregnant? I mean, at ballpark age, 25 to 35. Is that what you say?
She and I are going to differ on our opinions.
I'm saying 25 to 30.
25 to 30.
I would say you get pregnant at whatever age you want, but protect your fertility between 25 and 32.
Okay.
That's,
So that's the right age to sort of freeze your eggs.
and
Smart.
embryos. I truly believe that. I think today,
But then as you grow older, even if you've frozen your eggs in your embryos, if I'm probably in my mid 40s, doesn't it get more difficult to carry the baby also?
Can I?
pregnant- please go
Can
ahead.
I answer that? I have a lot of experience in 40 plus women who are pregnant and who have delivered and all. Yes, it is a high risk pregnancy, but you have to understand that a young girl under 40 has a chance of say 1 to 3% of developing blood pressure during pregnancy. Now a 40 plus has about 5 to 8%. So it is doubled or tripled per se, but 90% have a normal. So if you're healthy, so I think the whole thing goes towards remain healthy. If you're healthy, you can carry that baby easily. And today we are more experienced in delivering older women, and we can definitely pick up. And they should go to a center, which is like where they're getting more attention, because that pregnancy needs attention, needs care, and maybe needs backup. ICU backups for the baby, for the mother, and a lot of things. But otherwise, I think it's not so difficult now. A lot of women are getting pregnant at 40 plus. Some are getting pregnant naturally also. Some are using IVF to get pregnant. And it's not that bad.
Okay. What are a few of the myths or stigmas around female health that you can bust for us?
Wow, where do we begin?
Just your top three.
This is that,
I
no,
will
I think
restrict
this
it
is
to your top
I
three.
think this is the most challenging question you've asked us throughout this podcast, because there are so many myths to bust. It's unbelievable. One, tampons take away your virginity. Yes, that's one of the biggest myths that's there, because tampons are
You have to
inserted
insert it,
inside.
of course.
So if you've not been sexually active, they feel that it's going to break your hymen and you're going to lose your virginity. Well, in that sense, I always say this, that we're making a big issue over such a small tissue.
Yeah.
All right. So when we're using a tampon, it does stretch out the hymen. It may break, but even things such as cycling,
Can-
horseback riding can
Yeah.
break the hymen. Doesn't mean you're losing your virginity.
Virginity.
The only way you lose your virginity is by having sex.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the only way you're taking away virginity. Um, another myth. I have way too many which I can't just put into words right now.
That only the woman is responsible for infertility. 50% of the time, the man is responsible for infertility. So it's very important to get the couple tested when
Right.
you want to, when you're not, when you're unable to have a child. I think
Right.
that's very, very important.
Right. And especially, I feel like this is so true in, I don't know, the lower
Lo-
strata of the society.
Not
I-
really. I'm telling you, the
Because,
people who are
I mean, that's where I
Niyati-
hear these cases from,
Niyati,
where
you'll be
everyone is
surprised.
just blaming the woman.
uneducated literates are there. Uneducated literates. And
You'll be
they
surprised.
still believe. You'll be surprised. You'll really
Wow.
be surprised. In fact, I feel the lower class is more
Receptive.
Open to
it
sort of-
and all. Then they think, oh, twins meaning it's IVF.
Everyone just assumes.
Everyone assumes that with IVF you get multiple babies. So only 5 to 10%. Now the number has even gone down because we have advanced in technology. We are doing single embryo transfers. But that is a complete myth. So the only thing is, those who have single babies don't declare that they've got a IVF done. But the
Ah.
twins have no choice. Even if they say no, they're natural twins, people will say, IVFC hua unko. So, that's another myth which is very,
But
very
even
common.
if IVF hua to kya? Like, it's, I don't know what the mental block around it is.
Yeah, it's a social stigma. It's still a social stigma, unfortunately, in our country.
How do
and
you
it'll
change that?
It'll take time. No, I think
I think it has changed. When she began,
Oh, yeah.
she began 92, and now in 2022, you're looking at so many couples coming out openly for IVF.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, you'll see, an IVF center is not going to be at any doctor's clinic. So
Sure.
if a doctor's entering a patient's entering a specific clinic, you know that they're coming for fertility or they're planning a pregnancy. So I think the awareness and the stigma, awareness is increased, stigma has reduced, but the stigma has not gone completely.
No,
Correct.
but still, today also, I get a lot of patients who say, Doc, I'm referring you this patient. You were so good. But don't tell her I had an IVF pregnancy. So it still exists. It'll take some time to go away. Another thing which I really wanted to tell you, another myth is all IVF pregnancies, they are of donors.
Oh.
So it's very important to understand that
they
IVF
believe
is
it's a donor
your
sperm or a
baby.
donor egg.
It's never your egg or your sperm.
Ah.
So we need to tell that IVF was invented so that you could have your baby, your eggs, your sperms. So I think it's very important for people to be aware of this, because they feel IVF means you've used a donor sperm or you've used a donor egg. So that's also
See, I
something
told you, Niyati,
which is there.
don't get us started. We won't stop on the myths to be busted.
Abnormal children, you
Oh,
can talk
yeah.
about that.
Another thing, that IVF babies are abnormal.
What?
Yeah. So that it's a myth that look, it's your sperm, it's your egg. The risk which is there with your natural conception and your IVF conception are going to be the same amount of risk you're going to have with what your genetic material is capable of.
Absolutely.
So it's pretty much the same.
Another thing I wanted to address is miscarriages. I mean, they are taken rather sometimes very personally by the mother or the father going through it. So how do you change that frame of mind that you get into?
I think counseling and, as my mother likes to say, TLC, tender loving care.
Absolutely.
I think that's
Empathy.
important. Yeah, absolutely. Because look, they've lost their pregnancy, they've lost their possible child. It is a traumatic and emotional moment for them. So it's not going to be saying that, okay, snap out of it, it's just a phase, like we just spoke before. They do need that little bit of comfort, the counseling, because about 10 to 15% of all pregnancies are going to end up in a miscarriage.
10 to
Absolutely.
15%.
Yes, it's that
That's
high.
a high probability.
So, every woman, if you just talk to every woman, she's had one miscarriage in her life, sometime or the other. Literally. It's so common.
Right.
So it just needs to be handled with a lot of delicate, delic, delicateness. I think that would be the right
Yeah.
word for it.
Yeah.
I think just put yourself in that and hear her out. As you said before, listening is very important. So
Right.
hear her out. I think it's very, very important. And also sometimes, like in our field, actually, we say if there's one abortion, we don't need to do tests and all.
Hmm.
But there is a certain group of patients where the test will actually help us identify something. So today, the definition in the world over is three abortions. Americans say three abortions. No, I think the Europeans say
Europeans say
three
three
abortions,
abortions,
and the
Amer-
Americans have converted into two abortions. But personally, when a patient is with me, I think individually, even one abortion is bad enough, as you said.
Okay.
So then I do some tests, to see if that preventable cause of abortion can be picked up. They
Okay.
feel good about it because something is being done to address the trauma that they've gone through.
Correct.
So I think it's very important. It may not be cost effective,
Correct. Correct.
because out of 100, I may find 2 or 3 who may be positive.
Correct.
But I think for the mental health of theirs, for their, the trauma that
mental
they've gone through, it really does feel that, we are doing something about it.
Okay.
But ideally, yeah, TLC.
TLC. So backtracking a little bit now, tell me about some money lessons that you've probably learned early on in your career or maybe in life.
Take an investor who's your family. I know that's not possible always, but I told you that
Yeah.
my husband actually invested in me, and I could grow from there.
Okay.
And then, it was a very gradual growth. It was, I know you generation thinks, the different calculations that you'll do, ROIs, and the, the number of cycles and all that. You have this EBITDA and all those things.
Hmm.
I think how I grew was very organically. First, we started with the one center in South Bombay. Then Leelavati option came out for me. And when we were in Leelavati, we realized that we were getting a lot of patients from Delhi. And that's how we branched out into Delhi. And then, similarly into Chandigarh and all those
So
places.
how many clinics do you
11
now have?
clinics.
Wow.
So I think we've grown gradually. I could have taken a PE at any point and really grown into 100 centers and all. We were approached. But he doesn't agree with me. But I think I would lose my, like I like a particular catheter. It is expensive. I didn't want somebody coming and telling me,
To cut costs
okay,
somewhere.
no, that these are the catheters we are getting at 200 rupees. Please use them. But I don't know. I don't know the pros and the
There are
cons.
pros and
But we'll
cons,
wait for
but
him to
yeah.
answer the question.
Yeah.
Look at his face.
Firstly,
So-
I'm highly impressed that my mother's used terms
EBITDA.
as ROI, EBITDA. I'm quite impressed.
Me too.
You don't know your
That's
mother.
amazing.
You don't know your mother.
No, I'm guessing, as my mother says, the Google has helped her quite a bit. I love pulling her leg. I'm just kidding. But yeah, she is quite savvy that way when I go to look at money wise, because she's got a very savvy partner who understands it as well.
Right.
So I think they end up discussing it quite a bit. Well, I'm gonna tell you two very funny stories which I learned back in the day. My mum, obviously, she had a very busy practice, and we would spend quality time rather than quantity time. So she'd try and spoil me as much as she could. I still say she should thank God that I turned out to be a decent child. But we would go out for lunch. Obviously, lunch for her would be at 5 p.m. Finish lunch, and she'd like give me 100 rupees saying that, Rohan, go back by taxi.
She needs to go to work.
She needs to go to work. So I was fine. I would go one step further. I'd take the bus and go, and I would pocket the 95 rupees to save it for another time frame when I would want to actually
Wow.
spend. So that was something that taught me early that listen, all the money that you get, don't spend
Spend
it,
it.
save it.
Yeah.
Number two, I realized that budgeting is very important was when I was in med school. So mom and dad were traveling for about 21 days. They gave me money to spend for the time they weren't there. Obviously, when you get a lot of money, what's the first thing you do? You want to
Throw a
spend it.
party. Yeah.
Yeah, so we threw a party. We realized for 1 week, between my roommate and I, we had 60 rupees in our pocket for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 1 week.
Oh my God.
So we used to go to a canteen mess behind the hospital, which was the unofficial canteen, and eat lunch and dinner for 5 rupees
Oh
each
my God.
and survive on it for a week. Obviously, brains don't set in that the IVF center is literally in our hospital. I could just go there and take some money.
Yeah.
It struck me a lot later after struggling, and she yelled at me, "Why didn't you just go there and take the money?" So that's where I learned budgeting from that one incident. So these were two stories I would say from my early days, which I still implement today. That when you get your money, 50% goes into savings.
No, that's great because you
That's
also
a lot.
mentioned that earlier when you said that you started an SIP with your first paycheck where you just got 40,000 but 20,000 went into an SIP. That's amazing. That's a great practice to set early on in life. I mean, as somebody who literally was forced to do this, I didn't do it of my own accord, but my mom was like, no, you're going to save half of your salary and it's going to go into an SIP. I now realize the value of sort of setting that practice in place at that point in time. So it's great to.
It does help. It does help. Well, I'll tell you, as a doctor, that was the only investment I knew.
Yeah.
It's not like I was exposed to the stock market. Of course, dad's in the stock market, but you really need to follow it. Like right now, my simple funda is put 50% into SIPs. I'm putting about 20% only in A-chip stocks or
Blue chip
blue
stock.
chip. Sorry, see, we still need our education in the finance field. Like I'm looking at long term because in the short term, I know that there are things which have already been put in place by my parents, which will probably mature sometime around in the next couple of years.
Right.
So I'm looking at the long term picture that when I turn 50, 60, I have those things maturing at that time where I'm not I still want to go on my holidays. I want my wife and I to enjoy our life at that point because this is what I see my mother doing today.
Right.
That she's worked hard. I don't know how much savings she's done from back then, but I want to be in the same position where I can enjoy my life now after working hard for the last 30, 35 years.
Right.
She's saying 30 years, it's been 35 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
One thing I'd like to say here, especially when you're talking about finance, I probably am from a generation where my husband took care of things, initially. But then I realized today that a woman, we feel finance is a men's world, and here you are interviewing me. I mean, it's really beautiful. I'm really happy to hear that. But I think today, whether it's a man or a woman or whatever, they need to be in control of their own finances.
Yeah.
You need to know where you stand, what you have. I think it's very, very important. And especially as doctors, we are totally unpad where finance is concerned.
That was my
Uh,
next question. You literally led me to my next question.
we are. I mean, I have little bit knowledge, but not too much. So we have a lot of talks by finance guys who come and tell us how to invest and how to, secure it. And I think slowly all the professionals are learning that you
Right.
have to handle your money properly so that you can enjoy it.
Yeah. A very important thing that you said is that it's important to take charge of your own finances.
Absolutely.
Because if you keep letting your spouse or your husband or somebody else manage it, you're never really going to know what is happening with your hard-earned money.
Exactly.
So I think that's what we're also here to change. I mean, with Spin
Absolutely.
Cocktail, Siley and me, every day putting content out there, just trying to empower people to take charge of their own finances.
Absolutely, it does make a massive difference. Like at one point, as doctors, we used to think fixed deposit was one of the best investments because it was liquid cash available and you got 6% return.
Exactly. It's
And
not
nobody
even beating inflation.
Exactly. So now when you go to look at your SIPs, you're looking at your 12% on an average. At least you're a little bit 1% ahead of the curve of inflation.
Absolutely.
So these are small things which I learned, but much later on. Because actually, mom and dad just told me, Rohan, you need to look at our finances because we need to figure out what to do. Like,
Right.
we've just been putting it either in pension plans or something like that. And they're like, now we can't put things in pension plan. We're not going to live that long.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to end up looking at that point of view where you have returns which are giving you an ability to have liquid cash, but still giving you more than your 6% on your fixed deposits.
Absolutely. It's great that you are so well versed with it. Because I feel
Thanks,
like,
mom.
yeah. Because honestly, I feel like not too many people out there really know what to do. And like you said, I have a lot of doctors in my family and they all also believe that FD to best hai.
Exactly.
मतलब why do anything else? FD में तो पैसा safe रहेगा, जब भी चाहिए मिलेगा, all sorted.
Absolutely.
But you're earning so much, you have the ability to save so much, you have the ability to let that money work for you
Exactly.
without you having
Okay,
to
to-
do anything.
Absolutely.
Then why not explore those options?
Is that really a reality?
It
Somebody
is.
has to lose money for others to gain, no?
No,
I don't know. I find this very.
no, absolutely not. The power of compounding is just that.
Yeah.
That when you let your money grow at a stable rate year on year, it's going to compound to a much larger sum. It's not like 6 plus 6, 12.
I know. We are probably the older generation.
problem
Ki
is-
hard work will only get you.
The problem is we only know addition.
Yeah.
That's why we skip maths for med school, no?
Yeah, it's absolutely not a zero sum game. You know that somebody doesn't have to lose for somebody to gain. With investing your money, it's literally just letting your money grow. If you've done your research, put it in the right sort of investment vehicle, you need to literally forget about it for the next few years.
Exactly.
It'll do its job.
Like,
You know, as long as
Thank
you've chosen
you.
your fund manager well, you've done a little bit of research, or you're consulting with somebody who's helping you with this, who's an expert in the field.
that's exactly what I did for my SIPs.
Yeah.
Like, the SIP is giving me a good 18 to 20% return.
Yeah.
Or however small it may be. But when I look at myself almost 12
18
years
to
back,
20% is a
it's
phenomenal
phenomenal
return.
return. Exactly.
It's great.
Wow.
Touch wood.
Yeah, that's what.
I know.
I didn't know all this. Good, you're educating me today. So maybe I'll go and look at my balance sheet.
Another thing I wanted to ask you related to finance is that are medical students or graduates underpaid?
Now, that's quite a debatable
No,
question.
it is immensely underpaid, Rohan. I mean, look at the level of education and everything. I always say, even the people who are working with me, I mean, the pay scale is nothing compared to what you would have.
In the finance world.
In the finance world.
Definitely.
Sorry, guys, they are totally underpaid.
See, it's a very common misconception that it's said that, oh, doctors. In fact, yesterday I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was saying that, see, the BCom student is probably going to earn a higher amount when you start off, but then 10 years down the line, you're going to be earning much more than that BCom guy. It's not true. It's going to be just 1% of the doctors
That
whose
actually
practice
make
is going
it.
to pick up to a point where they'll earn more than the BCom person.
Absolutely.
Like, if you look at a BCom, someone who does an MBA, their starting salary would be, say, 50 to 60,000, which would eventually rise on a yearly basis.
Right.
I'm very sorry to say this, but doctors are just daily wage workers. You don't go to work, you're not getting paid.
Yeah. It's
Think
not
about
like
it
a
this way.
stable income that you're getting month on month.
Exactly. It all
Or year
depends
on
on
year,
how your
yeah.
practice has been for that month.
Yeah.
So it's very variable. A doctor just getting out and beginning, yes, for the amount of education that's been put in, the amount of time that's been sacrificed, yes, we are underpaid. Because I'll be very honest with you, the pay may seem quite high, but I told you, like 40,000, and mom said 500 rupees. But you have to understand that was the 80s, and I'm talking about the 2010s.
Right.
So there is a major difference in the inflation cost, but at the same time, so we live in a joint family.
But
So,
imagine if you were to pay rent.
yeah,
Rent is literally half your income gone right there.
I think a little
Probably
bit more
more
than
in
probably
cities like
my
Bombay.
entire income. Like if I'm in Bombay, say in New Bombay, when I looked at rent when I was a student was about 10,000 rupees a month. But if I go to look at the same place, it's 30,000 rupees a month.
Yeah.
So if you look at it in that terms, if I'm spending about 75% of my salary on
Rent, and
rent,
then the
what
balance
do
will probably go as your like expenses. When do you
hello,
save? How do you
electricity
save?
bill
Save.
bhul gaye.
Koi expenses like
Yeah, so there's no
electricity bills,
chance of
your
savings and things
utility
like that.
expenses.
So in Mumbai, it is a lot more expensive. But if I look at it at the same way as someone maybe a little bit more in the interiors, it would be a higher saving for them. But I still feel
But they
that
may not get
10
that
years down the
much.
line, I still feel 10 years down the line, after 10 years of education, I think we begin at a slightly underpaid salary. But I think that's always going to be a debate across all fields.
Right.
I'm sure lawyers feel underpaid, the finance guys feel underpaid, everyone feels underpaid. So I think at the end of the day, you've chosen your field knowing your expectations.
Yeah.
So I think you have to face the realities of certain things.
Sure.
So I think as time goes on, maybe it changes.
Sure. But the one thing that you mentioned is that it's not a stable income, month on month. Like if you're a salaried employee, I'm sure that this is the amount coming into my bank account each month, and it's easier for me to then account for my expenses, for my savings, for my investments. In your situation, how do you then account for your savings and investments? How do you manage your money?
So there are salaried doctors as well as doctors who are in private practice.
Okay.
So now I'm in both because I'm a professor as well,
Oh,
where
wow.
I'm teaching. So I know that there's a fixed income from there.
Right.
And then on an average, it's like how, let's look at the stocks, for example. You have an idea on how the market's going to behave.
Right.
So we also know that on an average, I'm seeing about 5 to say 10 patients a day.
Okay.
So I know what I have to take
Like a ballpark of
I have
what's
a ballpark
coming
figure
in.
of what's coming in, what my expenditures for my clinic are going to be, and accordingly I have to budget.
Right.
But my budgeting, like on an average, a doctor's budgeting is okay, this is my savings. Okay, I need to buy this equipment. I need to buy this equipment.
This is where your mind is running.
Ours is not like, oh, I'm saving 50 rupees. I should invest 25 of that into SIP or into stocks or something like that.
Yeah.
Our brain works in a very different, oh, can I get this new thing? See, look, with all due respect, the newer technologies we get is like imagine a teenager getting a PlayStation 5 at this point.
Yeah.
We are happy about the newer technologies.
Yeah.
We want to be able to use them so that we can give better results to the patients, and
Well, it's exciting.
it's
Yeah.
exciting for us. Like just a simple thing like what mom used to tell me. They used to use a petri dish and microscope
For
for
IVF.
IVF. It's still being used, but the quality of the microscopes which has gone up is like different.
Crazy.
Imagine like your old TVs, the dabbas, and now your
Those flat screen
flat
ones.
screens, your LED screens,
Yeah.
and everything. So in that way, we do just budget.
But then what you said is also like investing in your business, right? You're still investing that
Yeah,
money,
but
but it's
remember, there is nothing. It has to be depreciated
Hmm.
because it cannot appreciate.
correct.
in
But
your
your
other
skills
businesses
and
and all.
and the
The equipment just goes. Now, if you take an MRI and a new MRI comes, the old MRI becomes functionless actually.
Hmm.
So the same thing in our incubators. Incubators, once they're dumped, they're finished. They're zero value.
There's no
Hmm.
there's no like buyback as you have in a car or something like that.
Correct. But I think the value then you have to look for is in what you're providing to the patient.
Exactly. So we cannot be a very, ROI type of a person. You
Correct,
cannot, because there are a lot of things that you do which may not. Sometimes some technologies have flopped. I've had that experience. We had this new technology which we launched, metabolomics, and they withdrew it from the market. So I had this huge machine costing a lot of money and nothing to do with it.
Oh, wow.
It happens.
Right.
That's okay. Another thing that I wanted to, since you're talking about this, egg freezing is like a term insurance.
Correct.
Okay? If you need it, that's fine. Once you finish with your thing, you don't need it.
Yeah.
You can actually stop keeping your eggs,
You
maintaining
Right.
your
If
eggs.
you've already
So
conceived
it's
naturally,
like
you don't need to.
term
Yeah.
insurance, actually.
It
It is. I love that analogy. It's great. It's a term insurance. On an ending note, I want to ask for a piece of advice from both of you. What would you sort of What advice would you give to somebody who is just out of med school, a young doctor trying to establish himself or herself in the field?
I think times have changed, and a lot of kids are going for jobs, which is also very great because they get good hands on experience and group practice. I would really urge doctors to go
Emphasize.
into group practice, to go into partnerships, because it will give them quality of life like never before. And, like as I told you, if the machine doesn't work, we share the loss.
Yeah.
So the loss is shared and the gain is also shared. So I think it's a win-win situation if you find like-minded people you can work with. Doctors have egos,
Yeah.
so that is a difficult thing.
That
But
you need to manage.
death of ego is life. That is what we need to remember.
Correct, absolutely. And what advice would you give to women trying to sort of conceive at some point in time?
I would just say that be smart. Doesn't mean that you need to get pregnant early, but think about freezing your fertility or freezing your eggs, embryos, however you want, and think about it in the future. Focus on your career. I think it's very important for every woman to do that. Focus on your academics if you want to do it, or if you haven't found a partner, it's fine. Don't just get married to have a baby.
Absolutely.
So, being very honest, freeze your fertility, preserve your fertility, and use it in the future if required. Simple as
Wow.
that.
Simple, nice. I like it. I'm so glad that you both could make it on our podcast today. Lovely having both of you over, and I believe it was a great chat.
Honestly, Niyati, it was eye-opening for us also to learn a little bit of finance from
Yeah.
this. So thank you for having us on this podcast.
I
Thank you.
really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And I'm using his card, by the way. His card is on my phone because I am so old fashioned that I don't want to put my cards onto Amazon or to any other thing.
So can I give advice to young doctors?
Yes.
Don't put your cards on your mother's phone, Amazon, Paytm, whatever.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
doing
much.
this with us. Thank you.